Hello and welcome to Still Irish, Ireland's podcast of record. My name is Killian Foley-Walsh and I cry every time I watch the Titanic. This week I'm delighted to be joined by Considine, a teacher and former member of Aontú, who I think was a candidate for them in the local general European elections recently, weren't you?
Yep, that's correct, yep.
Well, thanks very much for coming along, Aisling. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
You've had a busy week, so that's why we're so happy that you could take the time to come and meet us. We're busy 2 weeks, I should say.
Yes.
What happened?
Well, basically, I left Aontú, but it was a long time coming, and I finally just resigned. And a lot of people have walked away from Aontú and just left. Sorry, I should mention that's my child in the background, working with her. She's here with me. But a lot of people have just left and just left quietly. A lot of good people. So I wanted to just release a statement just to let people know how it is in Aontú and how it claims to be a grassroots-led movement, a grassroots-led organisation. And in fact, it's not. It's very much tightly controlled from the top. People also tend to believe that Aontú is a centrist or centre-right party. And it's not. Like the grassroots certainly are. I would say 70 to 80% of the members would be centre-right. But there's a small group at the top and very much left-leaning. Anything other than the life issue and, the odd tweet on immigration, they'd be quite leftist. So that's what I wanted to get out there, that you have all these grassroots members and supposedly, it's grassroots led because you have the Ardèche once a year. It's actually coming up soon, and the Ardèche is the supreme governing body of the party according to its own bunreacht, according to the Aontú constitution. And, every Cumann or every branch of Aontú gets to put forward 4 motions, and then members come and they vote on them. And then whatever gets voted through becomes policy. And then, so it sounds great. It sounds very much a grassroots-led movement. But I found when I joined, I was privileged to be on the Ard Court. I was the executive committee, was voted in. And I got to understand that the Ardèche and the motions passed is just the first step. So then after that, again, according to their own constitution, there needs to be an implementation committee. And that implementation committee is responsible for translating whatever motions were passed into concrete actions and translating it into how are we going to put this into policy speak and whatnot. And so when I was a member of the Ard Court, I asked, where's the report from last year from the implementation committee? Can we have the motions from last year so we're not duplicating them this year and so on? And I got told, we've actually never had an implementation committee. So the motions were just words on a page, what was passed. And then you have well-meaning, hard-working, dedicated members who do all the groundwork for Aontú, and they think that their voice is being heard. They think that they're being listened to. They're told that they're being listened to. They're told that every voice is heard, and yet it's not. It's nothing more really than a performative exercise. And that's what's happening now. I think it's tomorrow. There are Ardèches. It'll be the same again. It'll be some people giving a few speeches up at the top and, people talking about motions and thinking we're going to do something, we're going to make a difference. And, for me personally, it took me about a year to 18 months to realise that if you're more centrist or right-leaning, your ideas, your initiative, your ideas for policy are more kind of, you're stonewalled, you're stymied, you're not really listened to.
And one of the phrases I've heard used about all this, people are sort of ostracized almost,
Yeah, but you don't realise it for a long time because you're told, that's a great idea, we'll look into that. And then nothing happens. And then when that happens a few times, you're like, wait a minute, something's going on here. So to get back to the Ardèche and the motions passed, to me, it seems what's been happening for the last few years, actually since Aontú's inception, is that, the leadership has just chosen which motions he wants to actually use as policy, and has just decided not to ignore the other motions. That happens to an extent in all the major political parties at the minute. But I think when you market yourself, particularly as a grassroots party, like I sat down with the leader of Aontú when I first joined, and he explained to me how it's structured, and so it has to be a grassroots party. Your voice has to be heard because all these structures are in place, and yes, they're in place, but they're not being used properly. They're being manipulated, and it's not really grassroots. Even though it claims to be.
Well, grassroots might be heard, but they're not listened to, is the impression. You're not the first person in your sort of position, or that your history with Aontú.
Well, like I said, like 2 members of the Ard Gorla have walked away in the last maybe 3 or 4 months, and they have both cited those reasons as partly why they've walked away. So, and then there's many good people have walked away. I know one of the chairpersons. I won't name what Cummins she was chairperson of, but she was very active, and she had a problem with it as well, and she walked away. So I wanted to just come out and let people know, rather than just walking away quietly, because I just didn't want them to get away with it again, because they've lost so many good people, and so many good people have given so much of their time and their energy to Aontú just to come away disillusioned, and they might be less inclined to join another party in future that might actually listen to them, and might actually be a grassroots party, and might actually listen to their voice and give them a voice to listen to.
Yeah,
so,
well, like I said,
rant over.
No, well, it's not yet. There's plenty more to come. We've had, like I was saying, a couple of different former A2 people coming on in recent times. We had Patrick Murphy on a couple of weeks ago. Didn't have an awful lot good to say. Similar to yourself, a former candidate for Aontú, didn't feel necessarily particularly supported by the party.
Oh no, I could have said a lot when I left, but the most kind of egregious thing to me was the lack of internal democracy in a party that claims to be grassroots led. So I just kept it at that. But there were other things, certainly. So I can certainly see where Patrick was coming from.
Exactly. And then before him, we had John Bryan, who was the former president of OGA.
Yeah.
We all know what happened there. We're not going to relitigate that or anything, but it's tough to get the impression sometimes. So we have the likes of yourself, and I think you were subject to some sort of a disciplinary hearing or something in Aontú for tweets or something like that. We had John Bryan, who was subject to all sorts because of the WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
There was a story over the week about an Aontú councillor in Wexford, against whom certain allegations were made. I think his council investigated it or something. It came to nothing. But the key thing there, I think, is that the council investigated. Aontú had no, as far as I know anyway, Aontú had nothing to do in terms of discipline or anything like that. Didn't even hear out the person making the complaint about him. And so a phrase that comes to mind with this sort of a privileged left-wing caste within Aontú. And that if you have a particular ideology, or particular thoughts or ideas about policy, then, we're going to look the other way no matter what's said. And if you don't, then by Jesus, we're going to come after you hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jim Codd is certainly quite left-leaning. And, I think he actually, it's not the first time he's courted controversy, actually. So, back in June 2025, he came out in the media and through the media actually attacked a fellow member and said that this fellow elected Aontú representative was fanning the flames of fascism. And, he didn't get so much as a slap in the wrist for saying that. And here am I now, and, the Standards Committee have come after me because of my tweets. And, not to harp on about it, but I was asked by Pader in December 2024 to take Aontú out of my handle on X if I wasn't going to be tweeting about party policy and I wasn't going to stick to party policy. And I said, fine, grand, I'll take it out. And then just went on with my life and just, with social media, I just share my ideas about things and my opinions. And then all of a sudden in October 2025, he brings me and tells me that, there's been a complaint and the Standards Committee are going to investigate, and all of a sudden the scope of the investigation was widened to look over all of my tweets, all of my social media, and they included WhatsApp in that. So my private conversations with Patter was included, and and he gave his evidence against me. It just seemed like going after a fly with a bazooka. It was just, you have to ask, why did they go after me when I did what Patter had asked me to do in 2024, like December, and nearly a year later, I was like, oh, actually, your tweets are problematic, and we're going to look back over them, dating back for the last 2 years, and all your WhatsApps. And yet you have someone like Jim Codd, those allegations involving that lady, they actually go back to 2024, summer 2024. So there's no way that Aontú didn't know about that. And to my knowledge, he was never investigated by the Standards Committee. And then he also, like I said, came out in the media and attacked a fellow member, a fellow elected rep. And that is actually against the Aontú Code of Conduct. It's explicitly against part of the Aontú Code of Conduct. And that's what you would use in the Standards Committee. And they never came after him over that. So what I'm getting at is I feel like the leadership wanted a reason to oust me, and it's like, oh, her tweets, because it doesn't add up. It doesn't stack up that someone like Jim Codd, it's twice now that very egregious things have been levelled against him, and there's been no investigation, whether they're true or not. There has been this hesitancy from Aontú to even investigate. So
what he needs to do, I think, in order to be investigated, is agree with the tweet online that says that insults the Mary Wallopers in some way, or respond to it with an emoji. I think that's one of your many crimes, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, when Patter first rang me and said, look, there's been a complaint about you, you put in a bullseye emoji in response to a tweet, and that was the complaint. And then from that, the Standards Committee widened the scope of the investigation to include all my social media. So, I mean, yeah, that's...
I suppose for fairness sake, we should make clear that, like you said, there are allegations against Jim Codd down in Wexford. That's all they are. I suppose the concern for us in this conversation is more the double standard that there seems to be with Aontú internally, in terms of investigating you for a tweet, not investigating others for allegations.
Yeah, exactly. And, he's not the only high up member in Aontú. Like, there's a senior member of Aontú, and, very serious allegations were made about this individual. There were 2 witnesses to this incident, and, a statement was taken from one of them, and it went no further. The individual was never even told he was being investigated. It didn't go before the Standards Committee, and, it was quite a serious incident, and there was safeguarding issues involved as well. So it's just more of it. This would be another member of this kind of leftist group at the top in Aontú. So
I've heard about this. I think a lot of people have heard about this. It's
if you move in these circles, it's you know who it is. You know who I'm talking about.
It's an allegation of sort of sexual misconduct, basically, by a high-ranking, I believe, employee of Aontú. And again, I know you couldn't possibly comment, but without names or anything, honestly. But an allegation of that nature against a high-ranking employee of Aontú, that I think has been, as far as I know, as far as I'm aware, has been brought to the attention of the leadership of the party. Again, without naming names, by a couple of people who...
Yes, well, other people have heard about it in the party, and, one of those people is one of the people I referred to who walked away from the Ard Comhairle kind of in disgust and left Aontú. We'd heard about it and approached the leadership separately and said, look, we are concerned about this. Was this investigated? If not, why not? And we were told, no, it's an alleged incident. The alleged victim didn't come forward. No, the alleged victim left the party a week or 2 after the incident and hasn't been heard from since. Nobody can contact them. But there were 2 witnesses. So even without the alleged victim's testimony or the alleged victim's accusations, there's 2 witnesses to quite a serious incident that seemingly has been buried. But her tweets, guilty.
But even at that, like, so the victim, or alleged victim, I should say, this hasn't made a complaint directly.
No,
against, it seems.
Yeah.
But
But as with a lot of, sexual abuse or sexual misconduct, people feel shame. They just want to forget about it. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to move on. And a lot of the time it goes unreported.
But in this case, it actually, I believe, was reported by a kind of a third party.
Yes,
Somebody who was, again, quite high ranking within Aontú, potentially another employee of some class, brought this to the attention of the leadership and was stonewalled.
Yeah.
And again, the suggestion being that's because the alleged perpetrator in all this is part of that hierarchy, or part of that left-wing clique, if you like.
Yeah, but so like I said, a statement was taken from that person, from the witness. But again, it's just kind of like performative. Oh, look, we've looked into it, and the alleged victim hasn't said anything. So, I think actually the leadership said it's hearsay if the alleged victim isn't the one he accused, but it's not hearsay because there was a witness, and we would all contend that, and we were just stonewalled and just had to keep quiet about it. Just told, no, if you keep going on about this, we consider it vexatious accusations and blah blah blah. So, not very healthy kind of atmosphere to be having in a party. But anyway.
No, well, it seems like there's a bit of a trend emerging as well. I hate to say it, because so many of us would have had so much hope, I suppose, in Aontú. I know I voted for them myself over the years, thinking that they were something better than what they seem to be.
Yeah, and most of the members, the grassroots members, are fantastic. Like, they're decent, hardworking people. They want to see the country steered in a decent direction. And, they look at the leadership. And, it's done a lot of good, and he comes out with a lot of common sense. But he's not going... You need someone who's going to be common sense, yes, but also will speak out on the things that need to be spoken out on. And he's not going to lead on those issues, no matter how much the grassroots bring it to his attention. So, like, say, there'd be lots of motions on particular issues, and you might be told, oh, that's a bit contentious, could you change that motion? I was told last year, my Cumann sent in a motion about like Sharia law, because we saw what was going on in the UK, what has gone on in many places all over Europe. And we had to totally water down our motion, and because the leadership actually rang myself and several members and said, if you submit this motion as is, I will have to stand up and speak out against it. Like, so Peadar Tóibín himself would have to stand up and speak out against our motion. And
God forbid.
Yeah, and didn't want, RT, that's all they're going to say is they're going to mention Sharia law and Aontú, and and he's right to an extent, but you need to stand up for the things that need to be spoken about and speak about them, because that's what your grassroots want. That's 70 to 80% of them. That's what they want, and they think that they're constantly being placated, and it's like, yes, we'll do that. Oh, we'll get around to that. Oh, but we're so busy. We're such a small team. There's always an excuse. And actually, they don't realise that they're actually being stonewalled. And then when they do realise it, they just become disillusioned, and they just kind of walk away or fizzle into the ether. And it's sad. It's not okay. It's not fair. So.
Also, Sharia law, like, very popular in Navan, for all you know. So it seems, Aisling, like, so between yourself, obviously you're on here talking today, Patrick Murphy, John Bryan with his assisted departure from Aontú and all that, like, for all we hear about their poll numbers, for example, when they go from 3% to 4%, we hear about it. From 5% to 6%, we hear about it. They call themselves the what is it they say, the most effective element of the opposition, or the most organised or something along those lines. But behind all that bravado and trumping up and everything else, it's shot, like, at its core. It's going nowhere. It's falling apart.
Well, like I said, the good people are leaving Aontú all the time. And there actually is a statistic, and it's going to sound crazy, but more people have left Aontú than are currently members. So that kind of speaks for itself.
I haven't counted, but I take the people who say that their word.
Yeah.
And it doesn't surprise me. Like, when you talk about the grassroots, 70% of them being relatively conservative-leaning people being forced to swallow all this left-wing stuff. And they're about to wake up eventually and just skedaddle out.
Yeah, and, it's kind of tying up the whole conservative movement and the life movement. You know, Patter doesn't seem to have any interest in talking about pro-life issues anymore. And he has said that it's not a vote getter because he wants to appeal to this leftist bloc. He's more interested in the votes that are, like, say, middle-class left professionals. Yeah, like, and he sees it as this big pie. And, you know, he has said to us that there were 4,000 votes in Navan for, like, left-wing candidates, and there was only 600 and something for right-wing. And so that's where we need to go. But the fact is, there was only 600 and something for right-wing candidates because people didn't come out to vote. There was nobody there for them to vote for, you know. So he's looking at this big pie of leftist middle-class professionals voting, and he's like, oh, I want some of that pie. But there's a big, thick glass wall between him and that pie. Like, so they are never, you're never getting their vote. Like, but that's what he seems to be focused on. And it's just people think that he is the more conservative centrist or right of centre, you know, the whole pro-life, but he's not. And he's tying up that movement really, and the whole conservative sphere. He's just tying it up, and, you know, it needs to be said, and people need to realise. And we need, I don't think there's anything else there at the moment that people can vote for, but we need a credible centre or centre-right, either a party to come out or, you know, independent candidates, you know, organised. And yeah, we just, yeah, because I mean, you have kind of more further right parties, they'd be more further right in their stances and wouldn't be as organised or as credible. So we need something that's kind of centre right to emerge, because it's not there at the minute. Like, people say, oh, Independent Ireland. I think there is a woke issue there as well. I mean, look at Keir Malooly, like, and who he joined in the EU. Yeah.
His name I forget.
And I was told that 2 of their TDs wanted to back Catherine Connolly, now, allegedly. So, I mean, I think there's a woke issue there as well. And they're looking at that same pie of leftist middle-class votes. So
I remember we had obviously Ken O'Flynn on a couple of weeks ago as well.
Well, yeah, I'm not talking about Ken O'Flynn. I think he's a superstar. I love Ken O'Flynn.
Absolutely, I agree with him. Or I agree with you that he is. But I remember thinking on Word 2 again, I think I saw an article about Michael Collins at one stage where he was calling for, like, the legalisation of prostitution, and I forget the rest, but a lot of different bits and pieces that the likes of you, I'm sure the likes of me and others, a lot of people who watch this thing wouldn't agree with, you know. So
no.
I think that, yeah, you're right in what you say, that there is a need for sort of a centre-right, right-wing party, but at the moment that whole space is being inhaled by 2 not centre-right parties, you know. Could be, should be, wish they were, but they're not.
And it's all people have, and it's like, okay, well, if this is all I have, I'm not bothering coming out to vote. You know?
Yeah, there are elements of hope, I think, though, for both of them as well. So I spoke about Flynn. There are, as you said repeatedly, good people in A2.
Yeah, like Paul Lawless is fantastic.
Exactly.
Like, if he was leader, I wouldn't probably have left. It would be a different party, I believe. If Ken O'Flynn was leader of Independent Ireland, they would be certainly much more, you know, they'd be much more votable. Like,
you better start lighting candles for those guys, it sounds like.
I would say.
Step up soon. Right, well, sure, look, on that then, I suppose, I want to talk about your recent activity as well. So since finishing up with Aontú, you've had some opportunities. I think you're just back from Brussels, where you're at an anti-digital ID event or something, were you?
Yeah, I was. So it was chaired by Christine Anderson, the MEP from Germany. She's part of the AFD. And it was really interesting speakers. It's available on the EU Parliament website. There was 15 people from Ireland came over, and it was Elaine Mullally is part of the Make Europe Healthy Again organisation, and she organised the Irish contingent. So very grateful to her for extending the invitation, and, you know, went over there and got to network with a few people and talk about different ideas, not just about the digital ID, which is terrifying, by the way. If you look at that video, if you look back over it, there's just so many ways that they could screw us over. So, say no to digital ID. And the big message was mass non-compliance. So like everybody has to just not comply. But yeah, no, that was really interesting. I was there. And then just in the wake of my resignation statement, when I put it up on X, I really got so much support, and I didn't realise how much support I had out there. So, you know, I'd like to just take the opportunity to thank everyone who reached out, even who just sent, you know, a little love heart or like whatever. In any small way, it was really appreciated. And, you know, like I didn't realise I had that much support out there. So it was just lovely to have people reach out, you know, on X and off X. And yeah, so just thank you.
Yeah, you enjoy support. It sounds like almost a ball and chain has been taken off you at this stage, even in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could never have gone to that event in Brussels if I was an Aontú. No. You know, could you imagine? Like, they are the leader is terrified of us being tarred with the far right brush, and so I just think it's not far right; it's right so far. You know, you just have to get on with it, and you can't just be afraid to do something and then not stand up for the values of your grassroots members, you know, or the majority of your grassroots members. So, yeah, it was like a ball and chain, and, you know, I'm happy now that I can I think independence is the way forward now, you know, and if I do run in the next election, it will most likely be as an independent, because the party that I alluded to earlier just doesn't exist at the minute, so.
I was going to ask you that. Have you any plans for the future that you're happy to talk about?
Yeah, well, I'm going to take a break for now. Take a break for a little while, and then just get stuck into the community activism, and then run in 2029 in the locals. So
weirdly forthright of you. We're not going to get people coming in who we all know are running in 2029 who are happy to admit it. So appreciate that, Ashley. Thank you for the honesty.
Thanks. You're welcome.
Well, thanks very much for that, so Ashley. I think we might leave it there. We've had a great conversation, lots to think about, lots maybe more to come up in the future, you never know. One way or the other, thank you as usual to everybody at home for watching, or wherever you're watching us. And as I say every time, if you like the sort of content that we're producing, then do please support us wherever you can by following us on Spotify, subscribing to us on YouTube, follow us on X, Twitter, all that sort of stuff. Comment on our stuff. If we're said something that you don't like, then let us know so. If there's something that we haven't spoken about that you want to hear about, let us know so as well. Because all that engagement helps us to keep producing this thing. So thank you again. We'll see you next time.